consider that. I just think, if you think back, decades, the student reviews and all that have always been risque, pushed the boundaries. That's what being young's all about, and I think it's absolutely fantastic, and good on the students for saying no, jump in the lake.
Have they forgotten that they're supposed to be scarf-dragging liberals, these people?
Exactly.
But how far, you see, OUSA tried to decide how far to push those boundaries, Gary, and the list of costumes to be avoided included blackface darkening, racial or cultural stereotypes, the mocking of culturally sensitive events and LGBT people, and glorifying sexual violence, so you wouldn't dress up as Bill Cosby. So is there any harm in having a list, or is it the compilation of the list that irks you?
Yes, it's the compilation of the list. It just totally offends me. I just think, look, young people are young. You were young once. Go out there, push the boundaries, break the rules, and yes, you will offend people, and that's part of your learning cycle.
We've talked about this many times now. Housing New Zealand, RNZ reports today, is losing meth contamination cases in the Tenancy Tribunal as it attempts to pass methamphetamine-related clean-up costs onto tenants. And tests that find tiny traces of P have been used to evict tenants who've then been banned from state houses and in some cases have had to pay tens of thousands of dollars in clean-up costs. And the Drug Foundation is dubious about the methods used, and so are experts we have talked to on the panel. Do you scratch your head about the Housing New Zealand approach here?
Yes, it seems very draconian to me. I mean, who's to say that there wasn't a visitor there or someone staying there that they didn't know about doing something with meth?
Yeah.
It just seems to me that it's over the top.
Do you understand the rationale behind kicking people out of state houses only to have to find other accommodation for them sometimes because there's nowhere else for them to go, and then they get back into another state house a year later?
Well, it does seem silly. On the other hand, I guess no one wants gangs getting into state houses and using them as methamphetamine factories.
Yeah, the point is made by has been made over the time. We've discussed this by a lot of listeners, that there's a big difference between a methamphetamine factory and the suspicion that somebody smoked.
Yes, exactly. Well, I think if someone has smoked methamphetamine in a state unit, so what? That's my attitude to it. I mean, in fact, there probably wouldn't be that many that haven't had meth smoked in them, probably.
I'll ignore you. In fact, you said that.
In some areas.
You mentioned, actually, speaking of rugby, before we go, rugby, and you mentioned the Chiefs, rugby has a giant problem, so why are its most powerful voices still silent? That is the headline on top of a piece by one of our panellists, Duncan Grieve, who runs the Spin-Off website, and of course he's referring to the business of Scarlett the Stripper at the Chiefs' Mad Monday function, and we await the results of the investigation. Do you agree about that point? Where are the senior players and the former players? What would you expect them to front up? Would this ostracise them? What do you think's going on here?
Well, it seems to me, Steve Chew's offshore, so and I would imagine the New Zealand Rugby Union don't want anything to do with it.
Yeah.
They're saying that it's a Chiefs problem, and I guess most of the New Zealand rugby elite have had other things on their mind for the last couple of weeks with the final of the Super Rugby and the Olympic Sevens going on. But there has to be a good, solid investigation, find out what's gone wrong, who's telling the truth, and it seems to me that that's very doubtful, and who's lying, and just get to the bottom of it.
You mean the details are doubtful?
Yes, some of the details seem very doubtful.
So you're saying silence isn't necessarily remiss. It's a Chiefs problem, so you want to hear from the Chiefs, not the wider rugby fraternity.
Yeah, I imagine that someone from the New Zealand Rugby Union would have rung someone in the Chiefs and said, what the hell's going on there, get it sorted out.
Yeah.
But I guess at the end of the day, it's down to the Chiefs to sort it out. We don't have these complaints about the other teams.
In the short time available, Gary, do you agree with that?
Yes, I do, and I think that whole macho culture that I always found offensive, and I have all my life, needs to be challenged in New Zealand, and good people within that organisation will do so, and they should.
Gary Moore, Graham Bell, thank you both for your company today.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Checkpoint with John Campbell on the way.
Kia ora everyone, I'm John Campbell. On behalf of the team, haere mai, welcome to Checkpoint on RNZ National. Ko te maira, e hoama, he kōrero kei te haere, he kaupapa kei te karawhiua. Tonight, we talk to the country's first medalist this Olympics, the woman who's put trap shooting in the national spotlight. We go live to a pub in the thick of the central North Island snowfall. Power out, but generator on. Two Pike River families go to the appeal court in pursuit of responsibility for the deaths of 29 men. The Auckland Council returns serve over the unitary plan. What changes do they want and can they get them? Todd and I will join us live. Executives from the last of the failed finance companies go on trial, and the longest drought, New Zealand drought in Super Rugby, comes to an end. We look back from Saturday night to 1996, the 21 season build-up to glory. All of that and more coming up. But first, Katrina Batten with RNZ News.
Kia ora, good evening. The lawyer for the man accused of murdering road worker George Taiaroa has told the jury that his client had absolutely no reason to kill him. Quentin Winders is charged with shooting Mr Taiaroa at a work construction site in March 2013. Andrew McRae reports from the High Court in Rotorua.
Jonathan Thames says Mr Winders didn't know Mr Taiaroa and had never met him or spoken to him. Mr Thames says his client would have had to have made a round trip of over 500 kilometres to be at the scene of the killing within 10 minutes of Mr Taiaroa returning from a late lunch. He asked the jury to focus on this and also the witness descriptions that vary widely of the colour of a Jeep Cherokee seen at the time Mr Taiaroa was shot and who was driving it. Mr Thames says the police decided early on that Quentin Winders was their main suspect and the evidence has been made to fit that. At the High Court in Rotorua, Andrew McRae.
Natalie Rooney's New Zealand-based coach says he's watched her go from missing the target to winning an Olympic medal. Rooney won New Zealand's first medal at this Olympics, a silver in the women's trap shooting. Sports enhancement coach Gavin Patton has been training Rooney on and off since she was in high school. He says it didn't take long for him to realise Natalie had something special, and it's been great to watch her progress.
Right from struggling to hit half the targets to where she's got today to winning a silver medal. You know, we've been working towards this for 8 years, I suppose, so it's an excellent result.
Gavin Patton, Natalie Rooney's New Zealand-based coach. Auckland's council planners are recommending rejecting some parts of the unitary plan proposed by an independent hearings panel. The council has just released a 618-page report which councillors will consider from Wednesday as they decide which parts of the development blueprint to accept or reject. A key finding is that council staff want to reinstate more than 2,000 sites of value or significance to Māori, which could be then better protected. Council staff say the panel was wrong to say there was no evidence to justify listing the sites. The Desert Road has reopened, but the Transport Agency says it's still clearing snowdrifts 2 metres high on the Napier-Taupo Road. Contractors and road crews have been working today to clear roads and restore phone and power to houses in the Taupo district and remote areas of Hawke's Bay. 400 homes are without power. The lines company Unison hopes to reconnect some customers in Hawke's Bay this evening, but says in the Taupo district snow remains a problem. The Transport Agency's Mark Owen says the Desert Road may close again if it gets too icy. He says crews are working to clear the Napier-Taupo Road and would like to open it tomorrow.
I just heard via the Civil Defence up there, they were talking about 2 metre snowdrifts. Whether that's on the road or not, or on the sides of the road, but obviously in some of those areas where the snow has come down, it's obviously pretty challenging. But it will be ice will be the secondary issue that they'll be dealing with as well, trying to make sure that it's safe right through the whole length of that route.
The Transport Agency's Mark Owen. The Financial Markets Authority is shrugging off criticism that it's taken too long to prosecute failed finance companies. The last of 19 prosecutions brought by the regulator started today, with 4 executives from Viaduct Capital and mutual finance companies facing trial at the High Court in Auckland 6 years after the company's collapse. The Sensible Sentencing Trust has criticised the delays and says executives found guilty are treated too leniently. The chief executive of the FMA, Rob Everett, says the sheer number of complex cases involving multiple defendants is to blame for the delays. The police say an intensive search is continuing for a tourist who's been missing in Paparoa National Park since Saturday. The 28-year-old British man, who's in New Zealand on a working holiday, set out for a day walk up Mount Bovis on Saturday morning but never returned. West Coast Area Commander Inspector Mel Aiken says the man was wearing light clothing and was carrying only a day pack.
We've had a number of ground teams deployed inland from Punakaiki, covering the tracks and trails that lead up and around Mount Bovis. We've also had air searches conducted as well, so those searches are still currently out, hoping to locate our missing man.
West Coast Area Commander Inspector Mel Aiken. Members of the man's family are travelling to New Zealand. In sport, New Zealand's silver medal winning trap shooter Natalie Rooney says she sacrificed a lot to get to the Rio Games, but standing on the Olympic podium this morning has made it all worthwhile. Rooney narrowly missed out on making the London 2012 Olympics and came agonisingly close to a medal at the Glasgow Commonwealth Games 2 years ago with a 4th place. She says she's worked incredibly hard for the past 4 years to ensure she could achieve her Olympic dream.
For the last 4 years I've been going over to Italy for at least 2 months and working with my coach, and that time is invaluable into my performance. The facilities over there are amazing, so I get a lot of time on the range and be able to practice in some good weather.
New Zealand's first medalist Natalie Rooney. The New Zealand men's tennis doubles pairing of Marcus Daniel and Michael Venus are out of the Olympics after losing their first round match 6-4, 3-6, 6-7 against Canada. World number 1 tennis star Novak Djokovic has been dumped out of the Games in the first round by Argentina's Juan Martín del Potro, a shock result that reduced the Serb to tears as he left the court. Del Potro stunned the Olympic favourite 7-6, 7-6. Katie Ledecky of the United States broke her own world record on the way to winning the women's 400 metres freestyle gold medal, the first stage of a rare treble she hopes to complete at the Olympics. Michael Phelps won the 19th gold medal of his Olympic swimming career after helping the US men's team to victory in the 4x100 metres freestyle relay. That's the news.
Damage control.
There's been discussions between the New Zealand Trade Minister and the Chinese Trade Minister as late as last week, actually.
The first silver at Rio.
Everybody knows it, and she'll come home. We'll be very proud because we've got a Canterbury Provincials coming up very shortly, and I'd like to think she'll be there. We'll definitely make sure she got the medal there.
Lifting the cup.
There's so many great Hurricanes men that have been before us. They haven't quite managed to win the comp, and there was a massive motivation for me to be the first Hurricanes captain to lift the trophy.
Winning Words, Susie Ferguson and Guy and Espin, a morning report, weekdays from 6.
Then on 9 to noon, why teaching children about stranger danger is outdated. And after 10, Mike Durant shot down over Mogadishu and taken hostage with the real story of Black Hawk Down. Join me, Lynn Freeman, in for Catherine Ryan after morning report on RNZ National.
Met Service weather through to tomorrow midnight. Northland showers today, some heavy with hail. Rain developing tomorrow with possible thunderstorms in the north and east. For Auckland and Coromandel, mainly fine, but the odd shower today and rain tomorrow night. Waikato to Horowhenua, including Bay of Plenty and the central high country, mainly fine with overnight frosts, but a few showers about South Taranaki today. Gisborne, Hawke's Bay, Wairarapa, Kapiti and Wellington, cold and showery with snow to 600 metres until morning. Showers clearing Kapiti tomorrow and easing elsewhere later. Marlborough and Canterbury, showers about the coast and North Canterbury until tomorrow afternoon with light snow above 200 metres, frosty inland overnight. Nelson Buller, Westland and Fiordland, fine weather, frosty overnight. Otago and Southland, cloudy periods with a few light showers today, fine and frosty tomorrow. And the Chatham Islands, a few light showers. It's 5:09.
Thank you very much indeed, Katrina. We are going to start with the Olympics. Celebrations already being planned for a 28-year-old from Waimate who shot her way into the history books today. Natalie Rooney picked up New Zealand's first medal at the Rio Olympics, a silver in the women's trap shooting, putting trap shooting on the map here, to become just the second New Zealand shooter ever to claim an Olympic medal. Her supporters say her success is utterly deserved after she missed out on realising her lifelong dream of going to the Olympics 4 years ago and set her sights on getting to Rio. Sally Murphy reports.
Just missed out on a gold medal, but Natalie Rooney could not be happier.
Feels amazing. I came fourth at the last Commonwealth Games. I knew what it was like to be close but not end up medaling, so I really wanted to not have that feeling again, so I definitely don't.
The 28-year-old says years of practice and mental preparation have finally paid off.
I've got a certain process that I try and go through every time before I call for a target, and I just been practicing that a lot and making sure that when the pressure comes on it would hold up.
New Zealand-based coach Gavin Patton has been training Natalie on and off since she was in high school. He says it didn't take long for him to realise she had something special.
Had the right attitude and the ability and everything else that required.
So what sort of progress have you seen over the years of training her?
Oh, right from struggling to hit half the targets to where she's got today to winning a silver medal.
Mr Patton says Natalie had a strong drive to make it to Rio after she controversially missed making it to the London Olympics after she lost her place to rifle shooter Ryan Taylor when he appealed his non-selection.
She spent 3 months of each year over the last 3 years in Italy training. She trains continually here when she's at home. It's virtually her life. It has been for some time now.
New Zealand's Chief de Mission, Rob Waddell, says Natalie is a real inspiration to the country's other Olympic athletes.
Here's a person who's had a lot of highs and lows over her career. She got 4th at Commonwealth Games in Glasgow. She got 7th at the previous Games. She's missed out in London, but she's stuck with it. She's obviously got great passion, great self-belief, and has just chipped away. And here's the end result. What a really great outcome it is for someone who's worked so hard for it.
Natalie shoots for the Timaru Clay Target Club, not far from her hometown of Waimate in Canterbury. Club president Craig Pilcher says she's played a huge role in growing the sport in South Canterbury, from starting the girls' shooting team at her high school to encouraging others to get involved.
We're just also very pleased for the commitment and effort that Natalie's put into this over the last few years, but specifically the last 2 years has just been tremendous, and it's just great to see it pay off. It's so hard for shooters in New Zealand to compete at that level against paid professional shooters.
Mr Pilcher says Natalie is one of a number of great athletes produced by South Canterbury.
We've got Hayden Padden in the rallying and the cycling, Mark Ryan, and there's a couple of others. There's a fellow from down at Waimate that's at the Olympics, Emma Dykes in the rowing. South Canterbury does produce very good athletes, yes.
Waimate District Mayor Winton Daly says the town held a civic service celebrating Natalie's achievements after the Commonwealth Games, so another ceremony could be on the cards when she arrives home from the Olympics.
Oh, it's actually blown away. It's absolutely fantastic that to see Natalie get a silver medal. I know that she's worked incredibly hard for it and she's been very unlucky in the past to miss out, so it's absolutely fantastic to see that she's got this far. She will be the talk of the town this morning. Everybody will be jumping up and down pretty happy for her.
After her win, Natalie said she was looking forward to a nice dinner with her family and watching the rest of the shooting team at the Olympics over the coming days. For Checkpoint, Sally Murphy.
The Desert Road has reopened, but the Napier-Taupo Road remains impassable due to 2-metre-high snowdrifts. We're going to talk to a farmer in the area later in the program. 400 homes remain without power in the Greater Taupo district and remote parts of the Hawke's Bay after a wintry old weekend of snow. Contractors and road crews have been working today to clear roads and restore power and phone connections to affected residents. Duncan Klaus is the owner of the Rangitaiki Tavern on the Taupo Napier Highway, and he joins us now on the phone. Duncan, you must be delighted to have a phone and some power. You've got a gen in, have you? A generator?
Yeah, I got my own gen here, John, yeah. Yeah, and we can't talk on a cell phone because the cell phone don't work here either. That's how nice, the old telecom is. But, yeah, so what do you want to know, when it started and whatnot, John?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what I'd love to know is what's the weather like now?
Beautiful day, mate.
But no one can get to you except locals, right?
Locals, yeah, but the contractors have actually opened up the road, but only for other contractors in the area that's working in the area. Otherwise, if you get all these rubberneckers coming around, you know what happens, don't you? The old grader might back over them.
Yeah, exactly. So there are people all around you, although, gosh, it's not a hugely populated area. You're about, what, a third of the way from Taupo to Napier, but all the locals, have they come and moved in with you?
Oh, I wish they could. We might make a couple of dollars, but no, most are still at home. They come in for tea, some of them, and shower and whatnot. So
I just see on the internet you took over there in 2009, did you? Is that right?
2008.
And have you ever seen anything like this? I mean, Central North Island gets snow, but have you ever seen anything like this?
Well, the 2009 one, that was quite a good one, but it was quite different. You know, it was pretty about the same, but it's quite different because there was, I think, just over 1,000 people locked in here between here and Tipahui.
That's right, I remember that. You really did become the shelter of choice then, didn't you?
Yeah, well, we had no option. Yeah, we had about 500 go through here and went through about 60 litres of soup and I think about 28 loaves of bread and everything else, you know, so they pretty well ate us out of house and home. And
did they drink you dry? Not that obviously we're making a point of people drinking, Duncan, but did you run out of beer?
Oh, no, the police would be happy about that because I don't think I actually sold a beer.
Goodness gracious me. So...
yeah, I had some of them locked in here for about 3 days before they got out, but no, it was a pretty dry, you know, session, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. So when is the road going to be open again, and when will your power be stored so you can stop using your generator?
Well, the power possibly could be out for about 15 days. I believe Unison are bringing in about another 40 men if they can round them up.
Wow.
Because just on Lochinvar alone, I think there's 35 plus concrete poles gone down there. And in the area, there's about 200 poles gone down on the plateau up here. And there's one of those big 33s, which is a big cable goes right through to the big pylons, go right through to Napier. One of those is tipped over Turkey, and so that'll be a while doing that too. But yeah, anyway, the contractors are sort of into gear now, and tomorrow I think we'll see a lot of progress. There's been a private contractor come in on the job, and so far he's got out about 15 little units around here to run their houses and also cow sheds.
So they're big, robust poles built to withstand the snow. It wasn't the wind, it's just the sheer weight of the snow that knocked them over.
Yeah, or just the ordinary steel fences. They're about 4 inches thick, you know. I mean, they look quite good actually. But yeah, you get that weight on there and then you get a bit of a breeze blowing, and because there's a big area that'll catch the wind when you take it between pole and pole. And I guess that sort of swings the top of the poles over and then bang, down they go.
Did you see any go down or hear any go down?
No, we've got no concrete poles here on our property. But yeah, there's devastation right through. There's a lot of wires went across roads and across tracks, private roads. And obviously, you know, a lot of wires were brought down in those areas. And even, not Tagara, Kinleith itself.
Yeah.
There's a lot of trees and whatnot down through there. But yeah, and there's been a few stock losses too. I can't put a figure on that there at present, but I believe there's been quite a few stock losses.
Gosh, it's a big job to clean up, isn't it?
Oh, hell yeah. Well, that's sort of only the beginning too. I mean, there's houses here that all the spouting's ripped off, and there's garages that have fallen in on a lot of homes actually. Garages are caved in.
Just the weight of the snow on the roofs.
Yeah, well, it varied, you know, from sort of 2 feet to 3 feet thick throughout the plateau here.
Yeah. Hey, Duncan, just before you go, what's the soup? What are you doing if people manage to get to you?
A bit of pet possum pie and curly pigtail soup.
Sounds good to me.
Hey, they done pretty good, eh?
Yeah, delicious. Duncan Klaus from the Rangataiki Tavern. That's on the Napier-Taupō Highway. I guess about a third of the way from Taupō as you're heading east. Not a very busy part of the country. And as Duncan said, just over 200 power poles down, a huge clean-up job to come. The families of 2 of the Pike River victims go to the country's Court of Appeal tomorrow to once again attempt to get someone held responsible for the deaths of 29 men. They're challenging the decision to drop charges against the mine's chief executive, Peter Whittle. Whittle faced a raft of health and safety charges relating to the explosions. But the prosecution was dropped, of course, after an insurance payment of more than $3 million in total was made to the 29 families. Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment determined that the public interest was not met by continuing with a long, costly trial and a low probability of success. But for Sonia Rockhouse, who lost her son Ben, and Anna Osborne, who lost her husband Milton, even to try and fail would be better than being denied the opportunity to try at all. So their lawyer, Nigel Hampton QC, will be making submissions on their behalf in the Court of Appeal tomorrow.
it appears that you can buy your way out of justice in the New Zealand justice system. For me personally, I want to see someone or people being held to account over my husband's death and the death of 28 other men in the mine. To date, we've had no one been held to account. We've had charges laid against people, but they were dropped. And we believe through a backroom deal, which was paid through Peter Whittle's insurance company, so it hasn't hurt anyone in the pocket as such. And that's just not good enough for my husband and the 28 other guys that perished at work, you know, and that's what we're fighting for. We're fighting to get Judge Farish's decision overturned and to hold at least Peter Whittle to account. That's all we can do at the moment. He was the only one under the Department of Labour who was mentioned. There was 9 charges brought against him, and then they were dropped after a backroom deal was done.
The payment of $3 million. Sonia, as Anna was speaking, you were nodding away. How important is it for you that the buck stops somewhere?
Oh, it's very important. I mean, you can't... I mean, our boys were killed. No, there's no two ways about that. And somebody's got to be held to account. I mean, they've not apologised. They've, you know, no one's come to us and said, you know, look, we're really sorry, we're stuffed up. And, you know, but nobody. And so somebody's got to be held to account. People can't just die in this country or be killed in this country and nobody be held to account.
29 people in a workplace accident.
Yeah. And actually, you know, 29 died, but there were 31 men down that mine. And the other 2 guys, I mean, they have to live with that for the rest of their lives as well. And their lives will never be the same either. And, you know, it hurts them to see that people have just walked away and nothing's been done.
It's just, there's just been a huge injustice here, John, and what really gets to me is we haven't heard the truth. You know, there's people out there who should be brought to trial so we can question, our lawyers can question them. You know, even a tiny bit of truth for us would be part of our healing. We haven't had anyone stand on trial and answer questions for what went wrong that day. And there's lots of people who can actually add to the pieces so we can figure out ourselves what went wrong. We've heard best guesses from the Commission of Inquiry that was held that caused the explosion, but no one knows for sure. And, you know, my husband was better than a best guess. You know, we want to know exactly what happened, and for us that is really important for part of our healing. You know, we haven't been able to bury our loved ones, so we haven't had that closure. We haven't been able to sit in court and listen to these people who were partly responsible for our men's deaths, and that is hugely important for us, and it's something that hasn't been done. So for Sonia and I especially, we're going as far as we can until we get some form of justice.
Sonia, I'm listening to Anna and I'm thinking that, Anna, you sound as raw and as sad and as bewildered as you did in the weeks after the explosion. Sonia, do you feel that way? Is it still an open wound for you?
Absolutely. And I don't think that's ever going to go away, and that's the reason that Anna and I are continuing to fight on. And fortunately for us, we have lawyers that are willing to fight for us. And for me, to fight and lose, I think we could accept. But not to fight and not have anything happen, that I can't accept. So for us, we will just continue fighting until we get something.
Have you ever had any first-person explanation from Peter Whittle, who was the CEO?
No. The last conversation I had with Peter Whittle, he was holding my hand, his wife was standing beside me, she was rubbing my arm, and he promised me faithfully that he would do whatever he could to get the men out. That was the last conversation I had with Peter Whittle. He looked me straight in the eye and he made that promise. And as far as I'm concerned, there has been no attempts. I mean, look, don't get me wrong. We do not want people to die trying to get the remains of our men out. That's not what we want. We want to go into the drift, which is the first part of the mine, to find any evidence that may be down there to explain what might have happened. And
Sonia, can I cut in there? The last conversation you had with Peter Whittle, he was rubbing your arm and promising he would get the boys out. When was that?
That was at the big memorial at Omoto.
Wow.
Within So we've not had a conversation or anything since then.
It's Sonia Rockhouse and Anna Osborne, and obviously we will cover the appeal court hearing tomorrow. Big old evening on Checkpoint. Let's go to the Auckland Council planners wanting to overturn some of the key features of the city's rewritten unitary plan. Todd Niall is in the studio with us now with a huge wad of papers on the desk, and that's only about half the material you were given this afternoon, is it, Todd?
Yeah, I mean, this is 300 pages. This is half of what has gone out to Auckland councillors who from Wednesday onwards have to decide which parts of the unitary plan as recommended by the independent hearings panel to accept and which parts to reject. And the bulk of it they're being recommended to accept, but there are some key things that the council says, no, we're going to contest that.
Talk us through them in order of magnitude. Now, obviously, you haven't been able to assess this forensically, but what do you think are the big things?
Well, interestingly, we heard from the council a couple of weeks ago that the findings, their initial skim of the findings from the panel supported the idea of the city, up to 70% up and 40% outside in the rural areas. What they're now saying is the way it's worded, that the 70-40 split is actually removed as a policy, and that's been kind of the guiding light for Auckland's planning. So the council is saying, no, we have to oppose the rejection of the 70-40 split and put that back in the plan as its kind of underlying policy. The other interesting thing, which we've talked about before, is the panel said there were 2,200 sites deemed to be of value or significance to Māori. These would have a layer of protection put over them. Developments that may pose a risk to them would have to be consulted over. The panel said, no, there's not enough evidence to support having those in, take them out. The councillor said, no, the panel made a mistake. The evidence is there, and those 2,213 sites should go back in the plan as protected sites.
With consultation, extra consultation required.
Yeah, it doesn't mean nothing can happen, but if something's happening around them that's deemed to be relevant to them, then Māori get to consult.
OK, forgive me, listeners, for using a lazy shorthand, but everyone knows what I'm talking about when I say this. The kind of debate around the character of the leafy suburbs, for want of a better term. What's been the council response to that?
The panel said we want to take out a thing called the pre-1944 overlay, which again was not complete protection, but a degree of protection for those villas and those areas that had pre-1944 houses in them, the old villas. The councillor said, actually, fair cop, we don't see grounds for keeping that in there, so we'll let that be scrapped. That's probably not going to go down too well either with people in those suburbs, but that was seen as coming.
So at first blush, to summarise, this is not outrageously controversial, is it?
No. I mean, the people in those suburbs are going to be upset about it, but there are other interesting findings as well. There's been a bit of publicity in the last couple of weeks for a historic heritage volcanic area in South Auckland called Crater Hill, almost like a mini Lake Taupo, Crater Lake, which the panel had said, no, we're going to zone that for housing. The councillor said, no, you've missed some key things there. It's prime soil, needs to be protected. It's in the Mana Whenua site zone. So the councillor is saying, no, we actually want to prevent that area from being developed for housing. So that'll be an interesting one too.
Gosh, it's fascinating, isn't it, Todd?
7 days of meetings coming up on it.
Right. Thanks, Todd Niall. Analysing the papers very quickly this afternoon. We appreciate it. The Labour MP, Ruth Dyson, let's head from Auckland to Christchurch. The Labour MP, Ruth Dyson, is calling for restrictions to the number of fast food outlets near schools after a KFC became the 6th outlet to open near Linwood Primary School, very near the school. The growing cluster of outlets has angered the wider community, with schools claiming the smell of fast food wafts across the school grounds on warm days. Maya Burry reports.
Year 12 Linwood College student Harriet Helms says fast food is everywhere in her school suburb.
2 McDonald's, 1 Burger King, 1 Domino's, 1 KFC, 1 Subway, and so it's everywhere. And the new KFC opened just across the road from Linwood Primary, so I'm sure that a lot of kids there are very tempted on their way home.
Kayla Hoskins, who's in Year 9, can often smell fast food cooking from her school and says some of the restaurant's best customers are students.
This is known to be a very low decile area, so some kids come to school without a lunch. So they get given money, and instead of spending it on lunch, they'll spend it on KFC or McDonald's or BK.
Ms Hoskins is one of many representatives from the community to raise concerns to the Hagley-Ferrymead Community Board about the growing number of fast food outlets in the area. The Community Board's chair, Sarah Templeton, says as a result, it's now asking the Christchurch City Council to consider limiting the number and frequency of these food chains in low-income areas. She says it's no coincidence they keep coming to Linwood.
There's studies being done which show that fast food outlets tend to proliferate in lower socioeconomic areas like Linwood is, and there are now rumours of one going into the Woolston area down on Ferry Road as well, which is quite close by, and it has really poor health outcomes for the people in that area.
But in a statement, McDonald's said that wasn't the case.
McDonald's has been operating in Linwood for 30 years, and our franchisees have a strong connection with the local community. McDonald's does not target lower socio-demographic areas or sites near schools when developing new restaurants. We restrict our marketing around schools, including no billboard or bus shelter advertising adjacent to schools. We offer a wide range of food and beverage choices and continue to make improvements to our menu.
Labour MP for Port Hills, Ruth Dyson, says the strong presence of fast food sent the wrong message to children.
From Linwood as primary, you can see the fast food outlets out of the classroom window, and when you go into the playground, that's pretty well all you can smell. I think it's unrealistic to expect 8, 9, 10-year-olds to be able to overcome that strong temptation.
Linwood Avenue Primary School Principal Gerard Doreen agrees.
Lots of areas in society like road rules and so on, we intervene and we regulate when we want safety and certainty around certain things. Why aren't we prepared to do it at local government or central government around the unregulated spread of fast food?
The Christchurch City Council will discuss the issue in a meeting on Thursday. In Christchurch for Checkpoint, Maya Burry.
Coming up on Checkpoint, executives from the last of the failed finance companies go on trial more than 6 years after the firm's collapse. The Aona Tete coal store reopened for the first time today after a fatal crash last Tuesday night killed 5 staff. We go there and talk to the manager. And transgender identity and gay rights advocate Carmen Rupe will be remembered when people cross the road on the green light in Wellington. All of that and much more coming up. But first, Katrina Batten with the RNZ headlines.
The lawyer for the man accused of murdering road worker George Taiaroa has told the jury his client had absolutely no reason to kill him. Quinton Winders is charged with shooting Mr Taiaroa at a Waikato work construction site in March 2013. Jonathan Tem said his client would have had to have made a round trip of more than 500 kilometres to be at the scene of the killing within 10 minutes of Mr Taiaroa returning from a late lunch. Natalie Rooney's New Zealand-based coach says he's watched her go from missing the target to winning an Olympic medal. Rooney won New Zealand's first medal at this Olympics, a silver in the women's trap shooting. Sports enhancement coach Gavin Patton, who's been training Rooney on and off since she was in high school, says it didn't take long for him to realise she had something special. A tourist missing in the Paparoa National Park has been found alive. The 28-year-old British man, who's in New Zealand on a working holiday, set out for a day walk up Mount Bovis on Saturday morning. A manager at the Ministry of Transport has been charged with fraud involving more than $700,000. Joanne Harrison was arrested at Auckland International Airport when she arrived back in the country on Friday. Japan's Emperor Akihito is set to deliver his second ever televised address to the public in which he's expected to talk about retiring. He's not expected to use the word abdicate because he's barred from political involvement. The Desert Road has reopened, but the Transport Agency says it's still clearing snowdrifts 2 metres high on the Napier-Taupo Road. It warns the Desert Road may close again if it gets too icy. 400 properties are without power in the Taupo district and Hawke's Bay, although the Lions Company hopes to reconnect some Taupo area customers this evening. And a section of State Highway 2 will remain closed overnight following a large slip in the Waimana Gorge. Drivers can detour through Whakatane and Ohope. Those are the headlines. I'll be back at 6 with more news, sport and weather.
Thank you very much, Katrina. Let's turn to business news now with Jonathan Mitchell this week, who's joining us from Wellington. Hi, Jonathan. Are there changes afoot at Michael Hill Jeweller?
Hi, John. Yes, it's Mike Parcell. He's the long-serving chief executive.
who's stepping aside after 16 years in that role. He's had quite an interesting career, actually. He started out as a watchmaker. Not many people might not know that, but he was a watchmaker to begin with, and he's been with Michael Hill for more than 3 decades. Over that time, the store's gone from 3 stores here in New Zealand to more than 300 around the world. He's seen some quite big expansion overseas into Australia, the United States and Canada. He's seen the opening of the Emma and Roe brand. He's also more recently had a company restructure, and their primary listing is now in Australia. Of his tenure, he says he's very pleased. He's managed to get annual revenues from 160 million when he started to 540 million a year. So he just says now's the right time to step aside and let someone else take over.
So who is going to take over? What next?
We understand Mike Parcell is going to have a bit of a holiday before he goes on to his next venture. What that might be is unclear at this stage, but the acting chief executive is the firm's chief financial officer, Phil Taylor. The company is going to put out a global search for the new chief executive. They have told us today they're going to take time to find the right candidate.
Gosh, that is an extraordinary story, isn't it? Gone from 3 stores to more than 300. What did the markets do today, Jonathan?
We had markets up throughout the world, obviously off the back of that strong US labour market number on the weekend. Here in New Zealand, we're still in record territory, up 40 points to 7348. The dollar a touch softer though, 71.16 US cents. And 93.44 Australian. John.
Thank you so much, Jonathan Mitchell, filing the business news for us this week from Wellington. Let's go to Rotorua now, where the trial of a man accused of killing road worker George Tāroa just over 3 years ago has opened. The Crown says its case, while circumstantial, is strong, but the defence says the accused has been fitted up for the crime. 45-year-old Quinton Winders is charged with the murder of Mr Tāroa, who died from a shot to the head in March 2013. The trial's in the High Court in Rotorua, and our reporter Andrew McRae is there and joins us live. Andrew, from outside the court, where I imagine it is fairly chilly. What is the Crown saying about the case? It is circumstantial, the Crown admits that.
Yes, they do, John. They say it's circumstantial because there's no weapon, it's never been found, and there's no DNA linking Quinton Winders to the killing as well. But they do say that there's enough evidence to show that he was in the area at the time, that he had a vehicle that was similar to the one that was seen at the scene of the killing, and also seen later in the area. And they also say that this particular vehicle had been, since the police started trying to find who did the killing, has been altered in some way, and the tow bar had been taken off, and various other things were made to modify the vehicle. Now what the Crown is saying is that the reason that they say Quinton Winders killed Mr Tāroa is that a week before the actual killing, Quinton Winders was with his father, and they were at came to the same roadworks at the tramway bridge where Mr Tāroa was working the go stop sign, and the car in front had gone through and then realised they had to stop. And before them also was Quinton Winders and his father. Now they backed their vehicle back and hit the car behind them. And when they got out and exchanged details, the Crown says that Quinton Winders said to the people that the reason for the crash was the blame should be on the go stop man. And one of the witnesses today, who was in that other vehicle, said she actually agreed with him. And the Crown also says that that was the catalyst for the killing, and that Quinton Winders really had a tendency to overreact to the behaviour of others.
Right. What do they say happened to Mr Tāroa?
Well, there's evidence from a truck driver who was near the scene when the vehicle stopped at the bridge. He was looking ahead and he could see Mr Tāroa lean into a blue Cherokee vehicle to the window and then suddenly stand up and sort of go stiff and then collapse on the ground. And he had no idea what was going on, but he did say that the blue Cherokee Jeep then sped off, and then the truck driver quickly made his way to the scene, and they discovered that Mr Tāroa had been shot, one bullet through the head.
So that is the early stages of the Crown case. What is the defence saying in their opening?
Well, they made a sort of a brief statement just when the Crown finished. They said that Mr Winders doesn't know, has never spoken to, has no idea, has never met George Taiaroa and had no motive or reason to kill him. They also say that he wasn't on Tram Road at the time, and had he killed him, it would have required something like a 525 kilometre round trip to arrive at the scene 10 minutes before Mr Taiaroa returned from what was a late lunch. So they say it didn't happen. They also say, the defence says that the witnesses who say they saw the vehicle and also saw the driver of the vehicle have wide and varied descriptions, ranging from a purple vehicle, a blue one, a black one, and the driver, some are saying it was a Pākehā and some are saying it was a Māori. So the defence are basically saying that their client is absolutely innocent, and the police basically, right from day one, within a couple of days, decided he was their main suspect, and basically the defence says the police have sort of fitted the evidence to suit their case and to point the blame at Quinton Winders.
Andrew McRae from the High Court in Rotorua. Thank you, Andrew. Executives from the last of the failed finance companies have gone on trial in the High Court in Auckland more than 6 years after the firm's collapse. 4 executives from Viaduct Capital and Mutual Finance are charged with theft in a special relationship and making false statements which left 550 investors $25 million out of pocket. Since 2006, 51 finance companies have either gone into liquidation, receivership or frozen payments, losing billions of dollars of investor money and sparking massive reforms of the industry. Anusha Bradley looks at whether justice has been served and if investors are better protected today.
The Financial Markets Authority has laid charges against 19 finance companies, but just 11 prosecutions have been successful. A further 36 cases were either referred to another regulator, dropped because of insufficient evidence, were too costly to pursue, or were settled out of court. All up, some 20 directors and accountants have served time in jail or received home detention for wrongdoing. A spokesperson for the Sensible Sentencing Trust, Garth McVicker, says many investors feel that's not enough.
I don't think they've been brought to account at all. And then you'll normally see that as they go through the justice system, they'll be treated as leniently as they possibly can be. And that might be they'll be released at 1/3 of their parole, their sentence, all that type of stuff. So it's not justice at all.
Some cases have taken years to get to court due to their complex nature and the sheer number of them. The editor of interest.co.nz, Gareth Vaughan, estimates up to 200,000 investors are still owed around $3 billion and says some have missed out on justice entirely.
The typical investor in a lot of these finance companies was an elderly person. Now, if you're brutally honest about it and you look at how it's taken a decade to take some of these cases to court, you have to wonder in some cases whether some of those elderly investors are even still alive. It's a classic case, I guess, of justice delayed can be justice denied.
The collapses led to an overhaul of the finance company industry, laws, and the creation of a new regulator, the Financial Markets Authority, in 2011. Its chief executive, Rob Everett, says valuable lessons have been learned, and while there's always a risk investors will lose money, they're now better protected than ever before.
It's night and day now to the situation that existed before the financial crisis that led to lots of these losses. I mean, you have the Reserve Bank that licenses finance companies directly. You have the Financial Markets Conduct Act and all the legislation that the FMA operates under, which focuses on disclosure by companies who issue securities. It focuses on governance, the duties of directors, and we've got a lot more power, certainly at the FMA, than our predecessor organisation, the Securities Commission, had.
A partner at Chapman Tripp, Jeff Shirtcliffe, says the regulations are now more sensible and directors that break the law are now more likely to face legal action.
Directors, in our experience, aren't as terrified as they were of potential criminal liability. On the other hand, there is a more realistic prospect of civil liability because of the change in the focus.
The editor of Good Returns, Philip McAllister, says investors who lost money in finance company collapses need to shoulder some of the responsibility.
Investors were greedy. They were just chasing the highest returns they could get, and they weren't doing a lot of due diligence about the companies they were investing in. And if you looked at some of those finance companies and you looked at the track record of some of those directors, you wouldn't actually go near them.
The final part of the Financial Markets Conduct Act, introduced 3 years ago, comes into effect in December, requiring all investment funds, including KiwiSaver operators, to be fully licensed. For Checkpoint, Anusha Bradley.
The Katikati Cool store opened today for the first time since the fatal crash last Tuesday night, which killed 5 staff. The 5 workers died, of course, after their car collided with a logging truck just after their shift ended around 8 p.m. They were leaving work for the day. Packhouse manager Clive Exelby told me earlier this afternoon the company had set up a bank account to establish trust funds for the men's families back in Tonga.
So we started this morning with some reading from the Word of God and some prayers, and so that was good. And then we just kind of explained what the week was going to go. And people have been quite positive. There are some people who were more deeply affected, and kind of like a couple of ladies who were very close to where the accident scene was and when it happened, and they don't feel that they want to work after dark tonight, because we will be working till 8 o'clock tonight.
It must be, certainly prior to the accident, a fairly happy, noisy, family-like workplace, is it, or was it?
Oh, yeah, certainly. I mean, we have 8 nationalities represented here, 5 of them from the Pacific Islands, and they tend to get in their groups and joke around. The islanders, particularly the Tongans, are quite fun-loving, and that was, when they'd finished that fateful night at 8 p.m, is that there was a lot of joking about who got a ride home in a car and who had to go home in the company bus, and we know that kind of jesting was going on. But that's normally their nature, where they're kidding one another along, and so we have a pretty international kind of group of people. We've also just hired some backpackers today who'll help us to fill some of those gaps. So that's not only the 5 deceased, but also some of their families who work here, who will be travelling back to Tonga for the services in Tonga end of this week.
It's a huge expense for those people, isn't it? And not only is it lost income, it's about getting home, the airfares, getting to Auckland to fly out. It's a big undertaking. And I know Halani, Kole, Samuela, Sione and Uluwapini were, I think in 4 of the 5 cases, sending almost everything they earned back home, weren't they? And so you've set up a trust account to give money back to their families in Tonga?
Yes, that's true. There is Give It a Little page, which I haven't personally looked at, but that's set up by a Tongan minister, and so besides they have compulsory. The RSC people have compulsory insurance, so some of the expenses are covered by insurance. Some of them are covered by ACC, so they've been all very good going forward, but the expenses are fairly large, and so the company has set up this trust fund to assist that, but also a trust fund to assist with the ongoing education of the children, because Stephen has children at home that are still at school. I think he's got 2 children no longer being educated. And then Samuela and Sione both had very young children that will all need help in the years to come. So we've set up that trust fund for that dual purpose.
And you've put an initial $5,000 into it, and then it's open for public donations.
Correct, that's right. Plus there have already been quite a lot of donations, but also from some of the companies that we are dealing with in the packhouse. Some of the packaging companies, Zestfree Marketing themselves, have been very generous, and so we're very appreciative of all that help.
So how much money have you got so far, Clive, roughly?
I think it's somewhere in the vicinity of 12,000. So.
That's pretty magic, and that's before you've gone to the public at all. That's just money that's come in advance of the public donations.
That's correct. Yeah. So and then public, because we're only just beginning to publicise the trust account now. And so that's, so we expect that number will climb now, and also as we begin to publish to some of the wider world about the trust account.
Clive Exelby, who is the packhouse manager and employed all 5 of the men who died. It is 10 to 6. Let's go to the Olympics, where sailor Sam Meach realised he had to stop offering his younger sister Molly advice when she won a World Championship title. The pair will make their Olympic debut in Rio over the next few days, with Sam, the first New Zealand sailor on the water, contesting the laser class with 2 races tomorrow. Molly will combine with Alex Maloney in the 49er FX, with their race starting on Friday. The pair won the world title in 2013 and are strong medal contenders in Rio. In fact, we look really strong on the water, touch wood. Sports editor Stephen Hewson spoke to Sam and Molly about what lies in store for them at Rio.
Well, Molly was selected a lot earlier, so it kind of put the pressure on me. And I guess it became a reality in April this year.
So, did she give you a bit of the hard time about getting in the team first?
No, she didn't. Obviously, my trials are very close, so I think she was careful not to pile on any more pressure. But it was fantastic, obviously.
So, how does it work as brother and sister? Are you able to sort of give each other advice, or do you simply just don't talk shop at home? What happens?
Well, we sail very different classes,
yeah.
So obviously there's a lot of differences between what we do. But yeah, we support each other with any way we can.
Used to try, but it doesn't always go down so well, so I learned not to quite a long time ago.
To offer a bit of a friendly advice.
Yeah, well, once they won the Worlds, it also became a bit hard, because obviously I'm still searching for a World Championship win.
So, Molly, did you take that opportunity then to start offering a bit of advice?
Oh, no, I've always looked up to Sam and the way he sails, but yeah, I think just sailing different classes, try and learn from each other with how we can.
Now, how have you found sailing out here? It's sort of, there's various things to contend with. Molly, what's been, I suppose, the most difficult thing to adjust to?
I think the current really here. The conditions really vary, like wind strength wise as well, but the current's really something to get your head around, and it's kind of always different each day, and every time we've been here you've always learned something different.
Does that therefore make it a wee bit more fickle, and maybe luck is going to have more of a say in results?
I think you've definitely got to be thinking, and it's going to be whoever can read the conditions and kind of understand what the best.
Did you feel at home now, given that you've had time here sailing, or just maybe still not quite?
We've been here a lot, and we've definitely become a lot more used to the conditions, but I think it's going to be really kind of down to the day and who can understand it the best.
Sam, what about yourself? What have you found most difficult?
Well, I have found it a very tricky venue. Obviously, with the big mountains, it's really shifty. And on our first couple of days, there may not be quite so much tide as we've experienced in the past, so it may be more normal racing. But there's a lot going on, which creates a lot of challenges, but a lot of opportunities as well.
So will luck play a part, do you think?
Well, yeah, there's always an element. But that's why we do such a long series. We do 2 races every day for 5 days and then a medal race. So hopefully everything evens out, and I'm sure the best people will win in the end.
Let's head from Brazil to Wellington, where the pouring rain didn't put the kibosh on Carmen Rupe, staging a posthumous comeback on Cuba Street. Everyone who lived in Wellington during the 70s will remember Carmen. The transgender identity and gay rights advocate died in 2011. Now she'll be remembered when people cross the road on the green light, with her silhouette used in 4 pedestrian crossing lights and what was the heart once of Wellington's red light district. Laura Bootham was at the launch.
Thank you, Jesus. Amen. 3, 2, 1.
Carmen Rupe, born Trevor Rupe, campaigned for hotel bars to be open late, prostitution to be made legal, abortion and homosexual acts to be decriminalised, and sex education in schools. Mayor Celia Wade-Brown says she was ahead of what was a very conservative time.
Her poise and grace showed that diversity is always an advantage, not something to be tolerated, not a problem, but an advantage, different ways of looking at the world.
Dana, a friend of Carmen's, says she saw the world through a very tolerant lens. Dana, who's also transgender, was beaten up and insulted just walking down the street, and Carmen's coffee lounge was a safe haven.
She was a person that cared about everybody, didn't matter what nationality, what colour, what sexuality, who you were. Her and Chrissy were both the same. They welcomed street people, anybody, into their establishment.
Dana says it was amazing how much the general public accepted Carmen, given that she was a prostitute and frowned upon.
I took my mother to her coffee lounge. My mother couldn't stop oohing and ahhing for a half an hour when we went into her coffee lounge. She said, just walking in, you seem to be enveloped with love and this warm feeling of, oh, I don't want to leave here, this is so lovely. And then Carmen would come sliding past and go, and how are you, dear? Are you all right, dear?
Trevor Morley used to work as a detective in the police vice squad in the 70s and came across Carmen because of her moral crimes. He says a mutual respect grew between them to the point he was invited to attend her funeral. But that didn't stop him having to set a sting to catch her out.
We had to carry out an operation to see if Carmen was in fact doing what people said she was doing, namely running prostitutes, having a brothel and that sort of thing. So we carried out an operation with a very elderly police officer as the undercover man, and yes, that's in fact what we were able to prove.
Mr. Morley says in many ways she was a model citizen.
It's not very often that you'd have a detective appearing at the funeral service of someone who he had arrested, but I looked upon that as a mark of her respect and my own respect for her, because as myself and my sergeant used to say, if everybody we dealt with was as good and cooperative as Carmen was, we wouldn't have had much work to do.
Georgina Bayer, the world's first openly transsexual mayor and member of parliament, says Carmen had an incredible influence on her when she first met her as a teenager.
Relief at finding somewhere where I could be safe and included was vital and important. Just the fact that she had a go at the Wellington mayoralty in 1977 also sort of thought our visibility and our ability to work or go to achieve normalcy in mainstream society was really important and reaffirming.
Carmen's friends and supporters say it's right that she's recognised as a rangatira, or leader, who had the bravery and character to take the road less travelled. Ko Laura Bootham Dene.
Lovely package, Laura. And if you were watching that on the live streaming or Freeview Channel 50, beautiful pictures from Rebecca Parsons King. We are coming up to 6 o'clock. After 6 o'clock, there was a little bit of Wellington rainfall in that package. There was a little bit of Wellington rainfall on Saturday night. So we'll go to Westpac, just a little bit, Katrina Batten. We'll go to Westpac Stadium, look at the Hurricanes' victory in the Super Rugby competition and chart the 21 years it took to get to that magnificent point. Katrina is dancing. In fact, I almost think we should have a shot. No, we're not having a shot of that. But to cheer us all up, if the rugby didn't do that, let's go to the Sicilian harbour, where a 1-month-old kitten about to drown after falling in the water in the harbour has been rescued and resuscitated by the Italian Coast Guard. The world needs more news like this. Here's Mana Rabi from Reuters.
Just a month old, this kitten was found floating in the water off the port of Marsala in western Sicily. After diving in to save it, the Italian Coast Guard got to work. The CPR, including mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, went on for a minute. But then...
Respira.
The kitten takes a breath. Italian Coast Guard are used to rescues in the Mediterranean, where scores of migrants get lost at sea. This particular water rescue had a happy ending. Port authorities were so touched by the episode, they've adopted the kitten and named him Charlie.
Somehow makes the world a better place. Katrina Batten. Just before we go to the news, police are attending an incident on Marama Crescent, New Plymouth, at approximately 5 o'clock, so 59.5 minutes ago. Police responded to reports that a number of shots had been fired. A man has been taken to hospital by ambulance. The Armed Defender Squad is in attendance and is assessing the situation. The investigation is ongoing. We will have more details on that the moment they become available. We do have a reporter based permanently in New Plymouth, and we will go there the moment we know more. It's 6 o'clock on RNZ National. Kia ora everyone, you are with Checkpoint on RNZ National, on the radio as always, but screening live on Freeview Channel 50, streaming live on the RNZ website. However you are joining us, thank you for being with us. Coming up in the next 30 minutes, why silver is gold for shooting star Natalie Rooney. New Zealand's largest farmer goes cold on palm kernel, but will others follow suit? The Labour MP, Nanaia Mahuta, will return to Parliament tomorrow wearing a moko she had done over the weekend, and the Hurricanes bask in the glow of their historic Super Rugby victory, 21 years in the making. But first, here's RNZ News with Katrina Batten.
Ngā mihi nui, good evening. The lawyer for the man accused of murdering road worker George Taiaroa has told the jury that his client had absolutely no reason to kill him. Quinton Winders is charged with shooting Mr Taiaroa at a road construction site in March 2013. Jonathan Thames said Mr Winders didn't know Mr Taiaroa and had never met him or spoken to him. Mr Thames said his client would have had to have made a round trip of more than 500 kilometres to be at the scene of the killing within 10 minutes of Mr Taiaroa returning from a late lunch. He asked the jury to focus on this and also the widely varying witness descriptions of the colour of a Jeep Cherokee seen at the time Mr Taiaroa was shot and who was driving it. Mr Thames said the police decided early on that Quinton Winders was their main suspect. The manager at the Ministry of Transport has been charged with fraud involving more than $700,000. Joanne Harrison was arrested at Auckland International Airport when she arrived back in the country on Friday. Edward Gay reports.
Miss Harrison worked as a general manager for the Ministry of Transport between April 2011 and this year. Her roles involved personnel, communications, administration and ministerial support. An internal investigation by the ministry uncovered suspicious payments, and the matter was referred to the Serious Fraud Office. The SFO says $726,000 was paid to entities associated with Miss Harrison. She faces 3 charges of dishonestly using a document. She's yet to enter pleas and is due back in court later this month. Ko Edward Gay, TNA.
News just in, one man is in hospital in New Plymouth after shots were fired about an hour ago. The police say they're attending an incident in Marama Crescent in New Plymouth. They say the Armed Defenders Squad is there assessing the situation. A tourist missing in the West Coast's Paparoa National Park since Saturday has been found alive. The 28-year-old British man, who's in New Zealand on a working holiday, set out for a day walk up Mount Bovis on Saturday morning, but never returned. The police say the man was found by search and rescue teams within the last hour near Bovis Creek. He'll be taken by helicopter to Grey Base Hospital where he'll be assessed for mild hypothermia. Family members are travelling to New Zealand and are due to arrive on the West Coast tomorrow. The Desert Road has reopened, but the Transport Agency says it's still clearing snowdrifts 2 metres high on the Napier-Taupo Road. Contractors and road crews have been working today to clear roads and restore phone and power to houses in the Taupo district and remote areas of Hawke's Bay. 400 homes are without power. The lines company Unison hopes to reconnect some customers in Hawke's Bay this evening, but says in the Taupo district snow remains a problem. The Transport Agency's Mark Owen says the Desert Road may close again if it gets too icy. He says crews are working to clear the Napier-Taupo Road and would like to reopen it tomorrow. A disgraced former lawyer who was struck off after being convicted of fraud and tax evasion in 2011 has told a court he did not favour a land deal arranged by Sir Ngātata Love. Sir Ngātata, who once led the Wellington Tents Trust, an iwi organisation, is accused of defrauding it in a property development. Former lawyer Sean Stevens said Sir Ngātata sought his advice on the property agreement, but he did not believe it would be good for the Tents Trust.
After they had spent a significant amount of time battling with the Crown
to get the ownership of land within this region back within the iwi. I found surprising that they would then put the land at risk by contributing it into a commercial joint venture.
Sean Stevens says it was a beautiful agreement for the developer, but would have caused millions of dollars of economic loss to the Tents Trust. The Aongatete kiwifruit cool store has reopened nearly a week after 5 staff members were killed driving home from work. The workers, 4 of them, who were from Tonga on seasonal work visas, died when their car was hit by a logging truck as they left after an evening shift. The store has been closed since then. The packhouse manager, Clive Exelby, says some staff members are more affected by the tragedy than others. He says the company has set up a bank account to raise money for the men's families in Tonga. Japan's Emperor Akihito is expected to indicate his wish to eventually step down from his role in a televised message expected to be broadcast in the next few minutes. The Emperor is 82 years old and has indicated to aides his wish to hand over the throne to his eldest son, Crown Prince Naruhito. The BBC's Grant Ferret reports.
This will be only the second video address by Emperor Akihito since he came to the throne in 1989, following the death of his father, Hirohito. The 10-minute recorded speech is expected to avoid any explicit reference to abdication, which could be interpreted as interfering in politics, something which the emperor is banned from doing under Japan's post-war constitution. But reports suggest he wants to hand over to his son, Prince Naruhito. The emperor has suffered from heart problems and cancer and is reported to have acknowledged making mistakes in his public duties in recent years.
Grant Ferret reporting. In sport, the New Zealand equestrian team must perform strongly in tonight's cross-country phase to have any chance of winning a medal in Rio. New Zealand has dropped back to 6th overall in the team eventing competition after the dressage rounds. Sir Mark Todd is the best placed in the individual standings at 17th. All 4 New Zealand riders will compete in the cross-country event tomorrow. Team manager Eric Devander is confident the New Zealand team will perform well on the Rio course.
They're well suited for this track. It's very technical. It invites the horses to run off the fences. They're not super big, but it's going to be 10 minutes, 15 seconds of absolute 100% concentration from horse and rider.
The cross-country starts at 1 a.m. Natalie Rooney brought up New Zealand's first medal this morning when she won silver in the trap shooting. It was a big night in the Olympic pool in Rio with a number of world records posted. Katie Ledecky of the United States broke her own world record on the way to winning the women's 400 metres freestyle gold medal. Sarah Sostrom won the 100 metres butterfly to become the first Swedish woman to win an Olympic swimming gold medal, while Adam Peaty's 100 metres breaststroke gold made him the first British male swimmer in 28 years to win an Olympic title. New Zealand's best swimmer of the day, Corey Main, reached the men's 100-metre backstroke semi-finals but missed out on the final after coming 15th overall. That's the news.
Tonight on Nights, Australia's first Mozzies, the Maori who lived in colonial Sydney and the man who takes tours of their old haunts. We have a window on the world of modern food chain, the chain that makes it possible for you to eat food out of season. And Leo Shep has a plant you wouldn't want to eat, the arum lily, and one you wouldn't want to sit on, the phoenix palm, on Nights with me, Brian Crump, from after the news at 7 on RNZ National.
Met Service weather through to midnight tomorrow. Northland showers today, some heavy with hail. Rain developing tomorrow with possible thunderstorms in the north and east. Coromandel and Auckland mainly fine, but the odd shower today and rain tomorrow night. Waikato to Horowhenua, including Bay of Plenty in the central high country, mainly fine but overnight frosts, but a few showers about South Taranaki today. Gisborne, Hawke's Bay, Wairarapa, Kapiti and Wellington, cold and showery with snow to 600 metres until morning. Showers clearing Kapiti tomorrow and easing elsewhere later. Marlborough and Canterbury, showers about the coast and North Canterbury until tomorrow afternoon with light snow above 200 metres, frosty inland overnight. Nelson, Bulla, Westland and Fiordland, fine weather, frosty overnight. Otago and Southland, cloudy periods and a few light showers today, fine and frosty tomorrow. And the Chatham Islands, a few light showers. It's 9 minutes past 6.
Thanks, Katrina. New Zealand's first medalist at Rio says her effort should be enough to land her on the honours board at her local shooting club in Timburu. Natalie Rooney, who's from Waimati, picked up a silver in the women's trap shooting, and she told our sports reporter Barry Guy, it feels amazing.
After my last round, well, I was leading quite nicely in the first 2 rounds, and then I had some pretty unlucky targets in the last round because of the wind. So I was a little bit stressed out after that round as to whether I made it or not. But the conditions were for everyone; they were tough, so I made it through. Yeah.
So a change in mental approach from that point on, in the sort of the knockout type stage.
Not really. I try not to change too much, just because otherwise you're just putting too much more pressure on yourself. So I just tried to stick to my process.
And what about that shoot off to go for gold or bronze? How difficult is that?
It is very difficult. I was lucky enough to be second, so after the first shooter, and she missed her first one, which was unfortunate for her, but great for me because I just took advantage of that. Yeah.
And how did you feel the gold medal bout match went?
I felt like I shot very well. I just got, I suppose, a little bit of nerves, and I rushed my process a little bit. Someone told me I did 2 in a row at some point, and it was just rushing a bit. Yeah.
And I believe you've had time in Italy preparing. Tell us about that.
So for the last 4 years, I've been going over to Italy for at least 2 months and working with my coach, and that time is invaluable into my performance. The facilities over there are amazing, so I get a lot of time on the range and be able to practice in some good weather. Yeah.
And what's this going to do what's this for Timaru? Great.
Yeah, it is. It's great. We have so many talented athletes from South Canterbury, and quite a few of them are here. So hopefully I'm just the first, and we've got many more to come.
And the Timaru Gun Club, I'm assuming you're on the honours board anyway, are you?
I don't know if we really have an honours board, but I'm sure I'll be on there now.
What a delightful person. The winter that arrived unseasonably late has left large parts of the central North Island coated with snow, some of it so heavy it's caused power poles to topple and lines to snap, initially leaving hundreds of customers without power. May take 3 weeks to repair. For farmers between Taupo and Napier, the more immediate crisis is to get to stock, trapped by snow, cold and sometimes with no feed to keep them alive. One of these farmers is Sarah McGough, who's been working in snow so heavy her 3,000 dairy cows simply haven't been able to move through it.
Well, I'm 5'3" and it was up to my hips. Like I was just about bogged in it. I felt more worse off for the cows. Like it's not very nice. We were all layered up, so we were all pretty good. But you think of them, they've got a calf on board. They've got nothing to eat apart from silage and straw that we're feeding them. It's not really the best of weather.
And they've all survived. All your stock has survived.
Yeah, so far everything's still alive. I think we've got one dead cow, which is just part of it.
Well, it sounds, in the circumstances, given the height of the snow and given the absence of feed that they were able to get to, that sounds pretty remarkable. They are with calve, but they're not calving yet, right?
No, we're not due to calve yet. There are a couple that obviously have calved given the circumstances and the weather. They've just gone up, time to calve, and saying that we have had a few springing up. So we knew there was going to be some calves, and it's just whether or not they pull through. We can't really do anything about it because currently we have no calf sheds. They've been caved in by the snow. We've got cow sheds and we've got generators at the cow sheds. That's the only advantage we've got.
So you've got the calf sheds have collapsed. The roofs have just caved in under the weight of the snow.
Yeah, we've got the only thing standing from the calf sheds is the poles.
Wow, that's heavy snowfall. So, that's extraordinary.
Yeah. It's amazing. Like it's an eye opener. It's a good little challenge.
And how cold did it get?
Pretty cold. It's not as cold as what I thought it would be. Like I wrapped up and the boys said I'd look like an Eskimo going out in the morning, but it really wasn't that cold. I guess because you were moving, had adrenaline running, trying to get the cows fed, trying to get fences up out of the snow so we could contain cows, stop them wandering all over the farm and out on the road.
And so it wasn't so much the cold as just the sheer weight and amount of the snow.
Yeah, just the all-round environment of it, really. Like it wasn't extremely horrible. It was just a nuisance.
Yeah. And what was it like at night? How long did you have without power?
We've been without power since Saturday morning. I regained power at my house at about 10:30 last night, only for the fact I've got a generator.
And so, what did you sleep in? What did you sleep in on Saturday night? How many layers did you have on?
Oh, all my 2 layers of pyjamas on. I wasn't freezing for no one. I can tell you that.
and so you've got a gen running. Have you got any estimate as to how long it will be before normal service is resumed on the power front?
At this stage, the power company are giving us 10 days to 3 weeks for power to actually be fully supplied to everybody. We haven't got our hopes up, but we're hopefully looking at having generators being brought in so we can hook up to the houses, so we can at least everyone sort of partly mobile with water and lighting and being able to cook for themselves, just to keep everyone happy.
Yes, it's extraordinary weather in the central North Island, but they are soldiering on there. It's 6:15. Farmers say they're going to need an incentive from large companies like Fonterra if they're to follow in the footsteps of Landcorp and phase out the controversial use of palm kernel. The country's largest farmer, state-owned Landcorp, will halt the use of the product from next year because it doesn't fit with its sustainability brand. The product's been linked to the destruction of rainforests and the loss of biodiversity in Southeast Asia. Here's our environment reporter, Kate Gudsell.
Last year, fires raged across Indonesia for months, killing humans and animals and leaving 500,000 people hospitalised for breathing problems. It was labelled the worst environmental disaster since the Gulf of Mexico oil spill in 2010. But there are fires every year in the region as a result of land clearing, including for the production of palm oil. Palm kernel expeller is a byproduct of the palm oil industry and used as a supplementary feed in this country, largely by the dairy industry. New Zealand imported a record amount of palm kernel last year, nearly 2 million tonnes. Guy Salmon chairs Landcorp's Environmental Reference Group.
Well, the problem is that it comes from the palm industry in Southeast Asia, which is a very fast expanding industry, and it's really out of control in the sense that it's knocking over a lot of tropical forest. There's a lot of fires in peat swamps. There's huge air pollution problems resulting in cities like Singapore from it.
Landcorp's moving to alternative, locally sourced feeding supplements. Its chief executive, Stephen Carden, says phasing out palm kernel fits with its new Palmu brand, which focuses on natural grass-fed meat and milk.
This is consistent with where Landcorp has been going for a while now around looking to develop some really environmentally sustainable farming systems, particularly in line with what we're looking to do with Palmu and our attempt to get closer to the consumer and anticipate their expectations around how their food is produced.
Stephen Carden says projections indicate the move to alternative feeding sources won't cost Landcorp any more money. And Guy Salmon hopes other farmers will follow suit.
This is, I think, a very interesting thing for other New Zealand farmers to look a bit closely at because, palm kernel it's been assumed for some time that it's the cheapest option here, but it may be that we could avoid destroying these Southeast Asian forests and make the transition away from palm kernel without adding to the cost of farming.
Greenpeace has been campaigning for 7 years to phase out the product, and its forest campaigner, Grant Rosamond, says Landcorp's removal of palm kernel is significant.
Yeah, being the largest New Zealand farmer, this will really set in place some good change, I think, in the industry to move away from palm kernel expeller as a feed. It's moving in the right direction in terms of moving back to being pasture-based focus, back to our traditional farming roots.
But Federated Farmers Dairy spokesperson Andrew Hoggard says Landcorp is cashing in on the current grass-fed buzz. He says the dairy processor Synlait pays its suppliers a premium for grass-fed milk, and other dairy companies like Fonterra will have to do the same to entice farmers to make the change.
Every farm's different and every farmer has different drivers and motivations. People are expecting the rest of us to go PKE free. Yeah, there needs to be a premium attached to it and we need to see the value in it.
Last year, Fonterra asked its farmers to restrict the use of the product. It says New Zealand dairy's pasture-based production does give this country a competitive advantage. But responsibly sourced supplementary feed, including palm kernel, has a role to play. For Checkpoint, Kate Gudsell Tene.
Labour MP Nanaia Mahuta returns to Parliament tomorrow wearing a traditional moko kaue tehe or chin tattoo. Our Māori Issues correspondent Mihi Narangi Forbes reports.
Most will know Nanaia Mahuta as a veteran MP for the Labour Party, but she's also the granddaughter of the late Māori Queen, Te Ariki Nui Te Atairangi Kahu, and a close relation to the current Māori monarch. Over the weekend, she took part in a traditional tāmoko ceremony, which paid tribute to both the former Māori Queen and the current King. 14 women had lines of lineage etched into their chins by 4 well-respected tohunga or tāmoko experts. Ms Mahuta feels very positive about the transformation, although she didn't look in the mirror immediately.
It took me a while to do that. Every time I guess I see myself, I feel that I see something different every time.
Ms Mahuta says while having the moko done, she thought of those who had worn them before her.
My tupuna, the one that comes to mind for me, was Piu Piu, my great-grandmother. She was a strong woman in her own right, a contemporary of Te Puia. So on my maniapoto side, I draw a lot of strength of character from a bit of that and a bit of my Ngāpuhi side. So she came to mind immediately, but I've been told since that I look a bit like my great-grandmother.
The design, which is unique to her, also replicates patterns from the wharenui where the ceremony took place, tāne i te pupuki at Wāhi Pā. It was someone very close to Ms Mahuta who inspired her to take part.
Actually, my daughter is the one that put the challenge out there. So, I embraced that challenge. She saw it, she jumped up and down, she goes, Mama, I love your moko, I love your moko.
Other Māori MPs are excited about having a moko kauatehe in Parliament. Sitting across from the Labour benches, Education Minister Hekia Parata says the news was great. Green MP Marama Davidson says it sets a real precedent.
What I'm really excited about is the statement that it makes that we have the right to wear our moko everywhere and anywhere that we are. And as I said, I'm so jealous. It would have been something that all of us would have felt so honoured to wear our moko kauai in the house with pride. I hope she does start something.
Nanaia Mahuta has been an MP for nearly 2 decades. She says wearing the moko kauatehe means contributing more to her whānau community and iwi. I asked her if this meant she was turning her attention to her iwi rather than politics.
Yeah, I mean, that comes up every time around about election time, and I'm sure I'll consider it in the same way I have around every election time. But I can't say this, I am at a stage in my life where you always think, right, what more can I do?
Tomorrow, Ms Mahuta will be back at Parliament after a month's recess. At the end of the week, she'll attend Kingi Tūheitia's 10th commemoration, which starts on Friday. Mo te hōtaka o te ahiahi nei, ko Mihi Ngarangi Forbes tēnei.
In a moment, we're going to go live to New Plymouth to the scene of a shooting in an armed defenders squad call out. But first, the rugby on Saturday night. I'm going to shorten the intro because it was, too long. So, Te Praisi, the Hurricanes were the only team in 21 seasons from New Zealand not to have won the Super Rugby competition. But that long, lean period ended magnificently on Saturday. A team sing-along 21 years in the making. This is Under the Stand, after the game, that ended like this.
30 seconds left as Adi Savia holds it up.
By that stage, the crowd was going off, unshackled from 2 decades of near misses and glorious failures and extraordinary potential not quite fulfilled. A team that had contained Cullen and Lomu and Umanga and Yeremia and Collins and So'oialo.
Just playing down the clock.
That somehow hadn't won. And then
21 years of Super Rugby and the Hurricanes have come of age.
I'm phoning Alama Yeremia, a member of the class of 96. Alama, it's John. How are you?
Hi, John. How are you?
Good. good. How good was Saturday night?
Yeah, no, it was awesome. It was great, and obviously the monkey's off the back, and it's great. It's great for Wellington and for the Hurricanes, past and present. But finally, we've won one.
Yep. Alama, did you play? You played in the very first game in Palmerston North in '96 against the Blues, didn't you?
Yeah, no, I did. It's way back when dinosaurs were alive. Giants, it feels like it.
Alama, tell me what you did in that game, because I know that you're too modest to say, so I'm going to force you to say it. What did you do in that game?
Well, obviously I played at centre.
No, what else?
I scored the try, so the first try of that competition way back then. But it was awesome.
You scored the first. You scored the first try in Super Rugby.
Yeah, like I said, way back in those days. So yeah, it was awesome. But it was you don't really have time to reflect on it at the time. But it certainly feels like it was ages ago.
So referee Paddy O'Brien starts the watch and we're away. Professional rugby is alive and kicking here in Palmerston North.
It almost seems quaint now, but it was a revolution in rugby at the time, and the Hurricanes gathered its jewels like a magpie. Kalan, Lomu, Umanga, Yeremia. At their height, the Canes' back four was one of the greatest in all rugby history, but they never won it, as brilliant as they were.
Well, I suppose that's why it makes it so special, the weekend just gone, and this particular group, it was fantastic that we finally won it, and it's great, great for the region and obviously for this present team. It's exciting as well because, they're starting a new era. And, they didn't have that many superstars, and they did it with, with a lot of planning and great momentum going into the last weekend.
Yeah.
So it was fantastic.
Where were you sitting or standing and trying to keep warm and sit? And I don't tell you weren't in a corporate box, were you, Alama?
I had no choice. I got invited down, so.
I had no choice.
For the last part, I was outside normally for all of it. So it was great to be. You had to feel it, and just standing in front of the coaches' box with all the other old players, former players. So it was great. It was just great to be part of the whole thing.
It was such a joyful night. And in France, two other former Hurricanes greats, Nemia Tialata and Periwipu, were watching it
at a cafe in central of Narbonne.
Periwipu played in the first final the Hurricanes ever made in Christchurch against the Crusaders in 2006.
Yes, I did.
Do you remember it?
To be honest with you, JC, no, I don't remember it. I got knocked out in
you got a nasty knock, didn't you? I mean, so not only was there fog around the ground, there was actually fog in your head, wasn't there?
Yeah, there was a lot of fog in my head. I remember sort of thinking before the game how whether they were going to can the game or not, but obviously they carried on with the game, and I don't think anyone saw the game.
Including the people playing it.
Exactly.
So what's it mean after that final and after last year and after 21 seasons to finally win it?
Oh, it's just awesome.
Sometimes just awesome sums things up. All the players who didn't win it all those years, Jerry Collins and Jonah Lomu having not lived to see it, so that for former players the final assumed a meaning larger than a mere sporting occasion. It was about a team that could have and should have, but hadn't until Saturday.
They managed to make everything stick for them, everything play in their hands, and it's just been great to watch.
20-3, the Canes won. It's 6:28. Police are attending an incident on Marama Crescent, New Plymouth. Oh, I should say the parade. The Hurricanes parade has been moved to Wednesday, 12:30, starting Stout Street. Police are attending an incident on Marama Crescent, New Plymouth, after reports that shots were fired just after 5 o'clock tonight. Our Taranaki reporter Robin Martin is there. Robin, what can you tell us?
Well, there's about two or three police vehicles here, a number of police officers at the scene at about number 43 Marama Crescent. A man's been shot. Police say that he's seriously injured and has been taken to the local hospital, Taranaki Base. I just spoke to a woman, neighbour here, Joss Coppings. She told me that she heard 2 loud cracks after about 5 o'clock, which about 5:05 set the dogs off barking, and she's actually out on the street just wondering what's happened. And that's about all we know at this time.
Okay. Sorry, forgive me. The Armed Defenders Squad are in attendance, but as far as you're aware, the shot was not fired by police. It was fired by someone prior to the police arriving. Is that the situation?
Yes, that's my understanding. There are people at the scene who arrived here before the police.
Okay. And the person who was shot is in a critical condition, latest reports say, so that person's been taken to New Plymouth Hospital? That's my understanding, yes. Okay. Is it looking like this is still an unfolding thing or now simply a post-shooting criminal investigation from what's happening on the ground? I think we've lost...
We're holed up here at a police cordon. There's about 5 officers here. We haven't been able to speak to an officer in charge, and there's just a handful of local residents braving the cold to see what's going on.
Thanks, Robin. Robin Martin from the scene. So there is a cordon up. A man has been taken to New Plymouth Hospital. Shots were fired prior to the Armed Defender Squad attending. They are now there, and the street Marama Crescent is cordoned off. Obviously, RNZ News will have more on that at 7. That ends Checkpoint for tonight. Thank you for being with us. We will be back tomorrow night at 5.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. The lawyer for the man accused of murdering road worker George Taiaroa has told the jury that his client had absolute